All right. Next slide. Okay. So Rod is going to talk for like 10 minutes, but I just wanted to show you some quick few pictures. So I'm going to show you picture number 1. I know we have small TVs, but let's see picture number 1. Okay. This is the first building we were in, and this is Daniel McConnell. This is Jesse. There's Jeff, and there's Kelly, and there's Emily. You can see a few other people in the background. And that was in the back room of Beth Shar Shalom. Next slide. We moved from there to the back room of Bethel Church on Glen and Tucson, and that's our little congregation there in that room. All the backs of their heads, beautiful. Next slide. Okay, this is at the bottom of the Muse. There's Timmy and some other people, but the Muse was right behind the Dairy Queen on 4th Avenue. And, there's Trizia. And they blew that building up and kicked us out. And a couple of weeks. Right, yeah, well, no. Guys, this is lost, okay? We're already dead and we're here. Next slide. So we got moved to the Lutheran Church on Campbell and Speedway, and there's one Sunday a picture of the people who were there. So I know they're really tiny, but after you can take a look at them. All right, and you can see Rod up there. Everybody can see Rod. All right, next slide. And this is the first Super Bowl Sunday, 2009. There are the pews and a few faithful people. I think it was a pre-church meeting on what we were going to do to the building. But you can see that all the pews were pointed this direction. This is this room right here. No, that's Aaron Cromer. Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to give you... Yeah, that's Chris's head right there. Right, the back of Chris's head. All right. So anyway, I just want to give you kind of a little progression of the buildings. Anyway, where's Rod? You can kind of come up here and offering. I need to pass this out. So I'm going to hand this to you guys over here. If you guys would pass this back. If the last person would just put it underneath their seat, that'd be awesome.
All right, let's go to God in prayer. Father, thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for leading us, guiding us, teaching us your ways. Thank you for calling us to yourself. Father, thank you for these spaces that you called us to occupy for a time. Father, I acknowledge that these 17 years as the village have been an incredibly blessed time, blessed by you as you call us together, as you call us into community. And now as we celebrate that, Father, would you receive our thank you, our gratitude for all that you've done, all that you continue to do, all that you will do as we follow in your ways. In Jesus' name, amen. It's kind of fun because I get to tell the story of the village, and each time I do it, I like to find different things to talk about because otherwise you get bored with the same old story. And this week I was reading Psalm 92 because a friend of mine passed away, and he had asked, before he died, he asked if I would be willing to do his funeral. And he said that there was a particular passage out of Psalm 91 that he would like me to speak out of when I spoke at his funeral, which will be this Saturday. So being who I am, I looked at Psalm 91 And then I started reading Psalm 92, and then I thought, Psalm 92 really talks about what I want to share with you tonight. So I just kind of went rabbit trailing. But here's where God called me to just give you this psalm. It is good to praise the Lord and make music to your name, O Most High, proclaiming your love in the morning and your faithfulness at night. To the music of the 10-stringed lyre, the melody of the harp, for you make me glad by your deeds, Lord. I sing for joy at what your hands have done. How great are your works, Lord, how profound your thoughts. Senseless people do not know, fools do not understand, that though the wicked spring up like grass, and all evildoers flourish, they will be destroyed forever. But you, Lord, are forever exalted. For surely your enemies, Lord, surely your enemies will perish. All evildoers will be scattered. You have exalted my horn like that of a wild ox. Fine oils have been poured on me. My eyes have seen the defeat of my adversaries. My ears have heard the rout of my wicked foes. The righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar of Lebanon, planted in the house of the Lord. They will flourish in the courts of our God. They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green, proclaiming, the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no wickedness in him. One of the great joys of following Jesus is being able to proclaim his love and faithfulness, proclaiming what he's done, telling the stories of his victories, of his amazing victories, telling others what he's done for us. God does great things for his people. He has been good to us. Some of us struggle with the goodness of God. We have demands and requirements for God to meet, and we only declare him good when those expectations are met. We say, if God loved me, he would surely, and then we fill in the blank with whatever we're sure God would do were he us. Our first struggle and the first call that we have when we struggle with God and what he would have us do and struggle with God's goodness is that we need to step back from our current troubles and open our eyes. I have to confess that I see God at work everywhere. Every stinking place I look, I see God at work. I see God always at work among us. I see his provision. I see his grace. I see his love. I see this building and all it contains. You saw the picture of what it was like, and then you see what God did. And I remember, like, when we were designing the kitchen area, and we were sitting in there, and then this whole worship area, and then there was another group that was dealing with the outside, and there was another group that was dealing with the kids area, and it was really fun because we all had these dreams, but we didn't have a lot of money. But we all came together and we worked and we did stuff, and God provided everything we needed, and we have this beautiful place. I marvel at what God has done. 20 years ago, I was a failed businessman in Phoenix who felt the unshakable call to plant a church in Tucson. I had no particular skills or abilities. I had many flaws. And still, for some reason, the regional churches of Classis, Arizona, the Christian Reformed Church, decided to send me to Tucson to plant a church. I had no idea of what lay in store. I had little idea of what would be required. I was pretty sure I didn't have what it took. My good friend Wayne told the folks of Classis, Arizona at that meeting that they were sending me on an impossible task that couldn't be done by anyone, and most certainly not by someone as unqualified as me. That's a friend. Wayne was absolutely right. That's what good friends do. They tell you the truth. I couldn't do this. I'm not capable. I'm not able. It was an impossible task. And there's a lot of more qualified people. Impossible missions for unqualified people is what God's all about. It's what He does. It's where God specializes. He takes us when we're weak. He takes us when we're in trouble. He takes us when we don't know what we're doing. He takes us when we're in pain. He takes us when we're in suffering. And He changes His world using us. God's at work everywhere. I have a good atheist friend I talk to regularly, and he always marvels that I can see God's hand in this world at all. He said, it's just such a dark, miserable place. There's so much pain and suffering. How can you see God anywhere in this? He just marvels at that. And I look at him and I marvel. How can you not see God everywhere? Constantly at work, constantly changing things. Like, how can you not see what God has done? The difference, of course, is that the Spirit opens our eyes. Ask God to open your eyes to see what He's doing and what He's done and what He'll do. Second thing is to tell the stories. The writer of Psalm 92 is a storyteller. He uses music as a way of telling what God has done. I have ridiculous stories of God's grace to us throughout these years. Ridiculous stories of the ways in which He's helped us, encouraged us. My friend Ginger Fisher died 2 days ago from a devastating cancer. Early on, when we were struggling financially here at the church, Kathy and I were going through some tough times personally in kind of the whole transition to what we were going to do with the village and all that. There was a part of me that was just tempted to give up. We were wondering how we were going to make our rent and how we were going to make our payments and what was going to go on, and it was just hard. And I thought, you know what, I should just go back to accounting and finance and those things. I at least know that stuff. I didn't do them horribly well, but better than nothing. So one day I sat down and I wrote a thing about grace, just an essay. And I'm a member of this group called CRC Voices, and I wrote this thing about grace mostly because I was having a hard time believing it. Believing that God was good. So I wanted to remind myself. I needed to tell myself a story. So I wrote about grace. And I posted it on CRC Voices, and some people read it, and including a newcomer, a lady named Ginger Fisher, who had just joined that group. And she sent me a little note privately, an email, and said, I really loved what you wrote about grace. And I so appreciate that. From my background, it's really tough to hear about grace, and I so needed to hear what you said. And I'd love to send a little thank you your way if you would give me your address. Ginger had come out of a very rules-driven religion that demanded a good deal of law-keeping for its adherents. In this private message, she talked about that. And she said she'd send me this little something. A few days later, a card arrived that contained a check for a huge amount of money. It was unbelievable. Way more than I could have imagined. It solved our immediate financial problems, for sure. Who in the world thinks that some random lady in Poughkeepsie, New York, would join some stupid little writing place called CRC Voices, read an article, an essay on grace, and send thousands of dollars to help a struggling church planter that she'd never met in Tucson, Arizona? How does that work? Later, she and her husband came to visit while we were meeting in the basement of the Muse, and we had dinner together, and I marveled at their generosity and thanked them and told them I couldn't believe that they would do that. And she said simply, well, God told me you needed some help. God does crazy things like that. It's up to us to tell those stories. The stories remind us and others, what God can do. The psalmist says, how great are your works. I remember sitting in the Seneca house, and we were praying about how great it would be to have a building of our own. And wouldn't it be fabulous? And then we looked around, and we were all young, and we all were broke, and we thought, that's so stupid. There's no way in the world we'll ever have a building. And then I got this weird, odd phone call one day from the Barnabas Foundation, and they said, there's a gentleman here that invests with us, and he would like to support your ministry. He would like to give you $300,000 so that you can buy a building. The condition is he will be anonymous. You'll never know who it is. So when you get those kind of calls, you kind of have that whole Africa thing going where there's some guy writing, if I send give them my bank account number, they'll deposit the $300,000. That's kind of where, but then I had heard of the Barnabas Foundation, so I thought, well, maybe that's a real thing, and it was. And we have a building because of God's goodness. Evil seems to flourish. The writer of the psalm notes that. But he doesn't choose to stay in that evil. He chooses to recognize that God overcomes evil with good. There have been seasons of my life when I've been angry with God. I've asked him why my sister has to suffer from cerebral palsy. I've asked him why Kelsey has to use a wheelchair. I asked him to explain himself. He never does. Never does. He tells me to trust him, to trust his goodness and his grace, and he calls me to do justice and do what's right, to offer mercy and grace to others, the same mercy and grace that I've received. He calls me to love the unlovely and to repay evil with good. He doesn't tell me to unfriend my Facebook-style friends, but to pursue their hearts and call them to repentance, offer them love and compassion. It's hard to do what he asks. It's always been hard. I want to be the punisher of evil instead of trusting him to do that. I want to right the wrongs in my time instead of him letting him right the wrongs in his time. He calls me to righteousness. He calls me to joy, and he calls me to celebrate, and he calls me to take delight in his goodness, and that's what he calls you to do too. He is my rock. That's where the psalm ends. He is my rock. There's not much else to say. We're going to have some time of telling stories, sharing what God's done through this church, through each other. If you have a story to tell of His goodness, that's what we're going to do, correct?
So I got 2 mics, and what we're hoping is just usually what we do every Super Bowl celebration or whatever it is, the building celebration, is just to stand up, or you don't have to stand up, and just say, hey, this is what God's done through this church this year, or this is what God's been doing in my life that I want to give thanks for. So if someone else would be willing to be my mic runner. Oh, we got one right there. I know you have a story.
Okay. I have suffered from depression for about 12 years, and it's been a long journey. I don't have a lot of relief from that. But on Wednesday, I had an amazing day. It was crazy, amazing day. I'm super nervous right now. I'm sure you cannot tell. But so there's this song that's been speaking to me on K-Love, and it basically the chorus is, I surrender, arms wide open. And it kind of hurts inside me because I can't sing that honestly within myself. And so I've been praying that God could help me to make that more true for myself. So Wednesday, I was bending over to get something out of the laundry basket, and somehow just that totally hurt my back. And I tried to stretch it out, and it wasn't great. But I asked Dylan for some help. He had found a spot in my back not too long ago that was just oh, wow, I didn't know that was there. Can you find that again to help? Anyways, long story short, he helped me to experience peace within myself that I don't think I've ever experienced. And I was able to rest, and I've also been praying for rest. And it was beautiful, and a lot of moments you don't see the beauty in things, but I could see it, and I'm like, this is so beautiful, oh my gosh. And it was radiating out of me, and I was able to share that with my family, and Dylan doesn't believe in God, and it was an amazing way to be this is happening right now, whether you believe in God or not. This is a beautiful moment that is happening, that God is answering my prayer. I was moved to worship in my heart, and that's really difficult. That's a thing that I haven't heard a lot about. I don't know, but I think it's kind of assumed, but worship is I think it was the first time I've ever worshiped in my life, and it was amazing. And I could show God's truth to my husband, who doesn't even believe who God is. And I think it was a seed. And I don't know, maybe it doesn't sound that great, but it was a beautiful moment in my life. And yeah, so I'll just give this back.
All right, so it's loud. All right, when people ask me about the village, I always say, it's community focused. And I would say that this year I experienced that in a different way. So if you know me closely, you know that my career is a big part of my identity. I invest a lot of time in my career and my jobs that I have. And if you know me even closer, you know that I'm really... I don't know, my strengths are in things like structure and organization and process and things like that. And I kind of makes how our family works because of that. So Karen works full-time as a teacher. We have a senior in high school. And then I work a lot of hours with my job. And I think the career and family, my core group of friends is the people that I live with, and then family that we see, and then people that I work with. So I think I was challenged by that, like this year turning 40 and just thinking about where my friends are and how do I relate to people and who am I close to. Because I think a lot about the people I'm closest to are often people that I work with, but they come and go. So I might be working with somebody, and it's like, oh, this is my friend, but then they leave, and then, I don't know. I felt sad about that a lot this year with things happening with Sears, the company that I work for. But I don't know. I feel good about a lot of things when I accomplish things and put a lot of responsibility and a lot of, pride in myself and things that I'm able to do. But then in August of this year, I got the kidney stones, and it was quite an ordeal. So for 4 months of 2017, I was dealing with this affliction of kidney stones, and I really had to dig deep into my community to make things work for me. Things like, things that I'd put on myself to do, like getting transportation for Donovan to school, or who's going to pick him up for this late night concert that he wants to go to. And it was this community really that helped our family get through that while I was out of commission. I mean, I had 3 procedures to deal with those kidney stones during those 4 months. I was on prescription pain medication that I wasn't able to drive very often, and I would do work as much as I could, and then I would end up taking one of those pain pills, and I'd be out of it. I mean, that was how I was living for those months. So it just really meant a lot how people in this community stepped up to help, and not even in things that I got everything that I asked for helped, but things that I wasn't even expecting. Like someone here even did my laundry. People just offering things. What can we do to help? So it really just showed how much our family and how much I'm loved by the people in this church.
Well, I'll go since no one has needed a mic on this side of the room yet. Michael and I just got back from a trip to Colorado, which is where we actually used to live. And it was really fun. Colorado is obviously a very beautiful place. We went skiing. We were talking as we were going up the ski lift, like, oh, do you miss living here? And, in a way I do, but also we just feel so at home here at the Village. I mean, this church was the reason we moved down here. Neither of us had jobs, and I had actually never lived here before. And I think the community that we've found over these past almost 6 years now have really made us feel at home, and that this is where, we're part of God's family, and the Village is all the family members. And so I just think it's a really great opportunity to celebrate God bringing us all together, people from various walks of life, and really enjoying and celebrating what He's done through all of our lives. So I was just reminded of how thankful I am, even though, people often ask, why do you live in Tucson? It's the middle of the desert, but there's so much more here, and it really feels like home. So.
So, God has really been amazing for our family. So, I think I can do this. So, when the opportunity for Logan to come into our lives, this was in late October. Stephanie and I, we talked about this for at least 9 or 10 minutes. It was just always, there was never a question whether or not we do it. I was just like, and it wasn't like something that we had to do. This was like God saying, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to do something amazing through you and with you. I mean, this was strong. I mean, this is like Abraham hearing, I'm going to build you a great nation. It's like, are you kidding me? And this is an impossible mission for incompetent people. I mean, this is like, okay, unqualified. He said unqualified, so we said incompetent. But it was just, and it's just been such an amazing thing, the way this community has embraced that and helped us and been with us. And it's just an amazing thing, and it's not something that, to the extent it was something we ought to do. It's like, well, we have to do this. It's just been a pure blessing. I mean, to the extent anybody gives us the idea that, oh, this is a really cool thing, it's like, get behind me, Satan. I mean, it's really, that's not what this is about. This is about God doing something so incredible through all of this. So that's our story. Thank you.
I would just say, I think there's a lot of environments that we grow up in that are not safe places, where love is not the norm. And I've had my share of those environments in my life, and I think what it's done is it's shaped me to be very skeptical of a place when I walk into it. Well, this can't be, this can't be an actually safe place. Love can't actually exist here. And 12 months into my time at the Village, I was sitting on the floor up front, and the Gilchrists, Colleen and Corey, I think, we were chatting after service, and they were like asking me how I was, and I think Colleen said some nice things to me, and my skepticism was still pretty hardened at that time, and I thought, okay, well, yeah, but like, you don't really care how I am, and you don't really mean those things. And then I reflected a couple days later that probably they do care, and that this is a really safe place, and a place that is filled with love. And so it took me 12 months to even see that. I still have a lot of hard-heartedness, but it's truly a place that is a safe and comfortable place. So thanks for doing that.
Hi. So, I guess in some ways I kind of consider myself to be the Village's favorite adopted stepchild. You guys have... God, have I been here for almost 8 years, Corey? I mean, it's been a long time. Almost 8 years. It'll be 8 years this summer. And you guys have watched us grow up. We renewed our vows here. We have become a part of your families. We've invited you into our house. You've invited us into yours. We're tight-knit, and there's been times when when families, you get angry at things like, oh, I just want to get away from this family, but I keep coming because you guys are family, and I love you guys also so very much. And this last year it's weird because like when I think about God's provision, I used to think about how God would add on to your life, your wealth, your family, and I kept longing for those things like, God, please provide us children. Please provide us financial independence. And God hasn't granted those wishes. In fact, He's taken those things away. But in the gift of taking those things away, for instance, He took away my feeling of independence, and He made me very aware that because of disabilities that I am interdependent on my family and friends. That yes, there's some things that I offer and there's things that I can do, but there's always going to be a part of my story that has to be told with the help of the people that love us. People like my parents, people like Michael and Ashley, people like Eric and Rod. And I started to go to medical coding school because of another. It's like I always figured I'd just do a day job long enough until Corey was able just to do really well in some job, and then I could go and pursue my artistic endeavors. And he took that away too. He kind of sat me down and made me realize that, like, I need to be the provider for this family. And in order to do that, I needed some training. So I found something that I knew that I would be good at, and I've stuck to it, and I take my certification in a month. And that's thanks to my parents and to my in-laws. They paid for the school. And Michael and Ashley went to Financial Peace University with us and taught us about saving money. And we're still not great at it, but we're definitely a lot better than we used to be. So, and they've just been walking with us through friendship and everything. And it's been a crazy year of just letting go of a lot of things. And when we let go of the family, the idea of having kids, we just realized how much space that we have. And we really want to use that space to serve other people, especially you guys, in any way that we can. We moved into a larger place, and our house is always open, our doors are always open, our couch is always open, and if there's anything that anybody ever needs, you don't even have to, what?
Oh, and if you have Instagram, you watched Mike and Kevin singing Enjoy the Silence over and over and over again, so.
But anyway, I mean, this has been a crazy year, and there's been a couple really intense crises that have happened that I'm not going to get into details about, but you guys have been there, and through you, God has been there, and I'm just grateful.
I'm just going to kind of play off of what Mike said, and there's just a particular moment that came to mind. Emily Lewis and I have gotten to be incredible friends over the past 8 or so years that Mike and I have been here. And one day I was really looking forward to her coming over to my house, and she's like, "Oh, I don't care what your house looks like." I'm like, "Good, because it's a disaster. It looks like a freaking hurricane blew here." But she didn't care, and she came over anyway. And about 5 minutes before she got there, I was putting my shoes on, and I had thrown out my back. And I couldn't move, basically. And she comes in and gets me situated on the couch and gets my feet up, gets me my phone so I can call my husband and have him come home, and paints my toenails. And it was such an incredible display of love from somebody that I wouldn't have had if we didn't start coming here. And I'm so thankful for that, not just for Emily, but for all of you guys, and just for the love that you've shown us as we've been here. So thank you for that.
So my story is about 15 years old. Well, so if you know me, I'm a recovering legalist and rule follower. Born into the church, raised in the church. I've always been sort of Christian by culture, at least. And I remember going to the Seneca House many, many years ago, I think for leadership team or something. And I just screwed up rather royally, broken one of the rules that were really important. And I've thought a lot about Romans 6 over the years, of this idea that, you know, my heart loves God, but there's this other thing that this sin within me, but it's not really me, it's the sin within me. And, you know, I believe all those things about grace, but I had a real question about whether that passage was about me. Because I also knew that there were a lot of other people, very possibly me, who were good at putting on a show and looking like good people and not really interested in following God. And as I was sitting there reeling in the acknowledgement of what I'd just done, I was about 60% convinced that I was one of those. And I went to leadership team. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure I even belong here because I'm not sure that I actually believe God. Like, I think maybe my core is black and I've got this pretense of loving God over the top. And Rod looked at me and he said, Russ, you know that I've got insight from God, and you know that I know you. I know you really well. And Rod had not known me terribly long then, but he'd seen. And he said, I know that you love God, and it's true. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. And the reason I tell that story now is because I still go back. Like, that's kind of my anchor point, right? My salvation comes from Jesus, but my confidence that I actually believe in Jesus came through what Rod said, what Jesus said through Rod. It was a really wonderful time. So thank you, God, and thank you, Rod.
I really have a big thank you to say to all of you for how you have cared for me in my ups and downs. I have never felt judged for my bipolar. I've never felt judged for any of the crazy things that I've felt or how I've doubted. I've always felt loved and heard and treasured in my weakness. And all the different physical stuff where I couldn't carry things or had to lay on the floor in the back and couldn't sit up for the service when my back was bad. There just has never been shame, and that is amazing. And I just want to thank all of you who've prayed for me and all of you who have stopped and cried with me. It's just really helped me to believe in God's heart toward me. What?
No, I'm not pointing at anyone. I had a daughter this year, and I am very for that. And one of the things I really like about the village is that we ask questions that get people off guard. So someone asked me, what is God teaching you through your daughter? And I hadn't thought about that because I think, well, I'm her father, so I should teach her about God. So I had to think about it, and the thing that comes to mind is that sometimes she cries in the dark, and then when I walk in, she smiles at me. And it makes no sense because you'd think she'd just keep crying and be mad at me that she was crying in the dark. But instead, when the light comes on and she sees me, she smiles. And I think it's just an invitation for me when I'm crying in the dark and the light comes on to just smile and see God and tell him, man, I was really afraid because it was dark and I was crying. And also, every time I put her down to go to bed, I think I should pray for her. And so it's invited me into prayer more and more and more, which is really cool. All right.
So I'm grateful to be breathing through my nose. And the way that ties into the village is I'm hoping that this will mean this will not be a year where I'm sick every other week, at least how it seems. but I tend to get my identity from doing things for people and coming through for people. And there was a lot of time where I wasn't able to do that this year. Like I was in bed, I was sick again, had mono, there was just all these things. And I was just very grateful this year for how many of you stepped in and ministered to each other and ministered to me and helped me more and more to see that it's not just about me coming through for people, but there's actual connection and friendship and love in the community. And so thanks.
Anyone else?
Oh, see.
This past year is a year where I've been crying a lot, and I'm not particularly comfortable with that, but you all have been really safe people to cry with. And I think also it's been really cool to experience hearing God's voice through you, and sometimes I don't know what the next step is, and somebody bravely tells me the hard thing that's next, or the way to walk in that's not hard, or affirms my identity in Christ. And I'm really grateful for that with you.
Okay, I can't believe I'm actually talking into a microphone because that makes me really nervous. But we came to the village about a little over 2 years ago, and I had just come back from a trip, and Bob picked me up from the airport and said, "Oh my gosh, you have got to see this place that I went for church this weekend." And I said, "Well, drive me by it." So we start driving down this dilapidated road, and I
didn't think I could find it. I think we just kind of drove around.
Yeah, and we pulled up, and there's a guy outside in shorts and tennies and a plaid shirt, and he's got a bandana wrapped around his head. I'm like, "Hey, is that the maintenance guy?" Yes. And Bob said yes. And the tech guy, and the dishwasher, and the pastor. So we stopped, we said hello, we did our thing. And I came next Sunday, which for those of you who know me a little better, know that was a really tough thing for me to do, because I grew up in a family where you were to fear God, but none of the glory in God was ever recognized. So I guess I just want to say thanks to Eric for keeping it real, and to each and every one of you who I may not get to connect with on a weekly basis or even a monthly basis, or I see you in passing and give you a wave, or the times when I meet you and I should know your name, but I'm really terrible at that, and so I can't remember. I just want to say that I think part of what God has given me and all of you at the village is just what's been keeping it real. So, thanks.
So, I wanted to share a specific moment that I had. It was after I was praying for someone in the healing chair and crying like crazy because that's my thing. And and I remember after that I was dancing with the children, and it was so joyful. And I was reminded that the spiritual gift of mercy goes both ways. And I've been blessed by all your kids.
Yes, me. I want to affirm what my brother and several other people have said about this being a safe place. And I want to thank this community for also being an exposing place. Many of you have asked me very difficult and right and poignant questions that make me very afraid to stay in community at sometimes. It makes me afraid to bring my girlfriend here, and she teaches in Phoenix on Monday mornings, so that's a really convenient excuse for me to not invite her here a lot. But I guess I want to proclaim the way God has used this community in my life, but also just confess that I still have a lot of fear. And so I want to ask you all to keep pressing in, not too much, but just thank you.
All right, David.
Okay.
What David just said, what David just said about asking good questions, I've always loved that about the village and general appreciation. Am I cutting out? Because I think, growing up, I feel like I was given lots of answers, and answers are totally needed, but I feel like questions give you that. You wrestle with questions. You don't wrestle with answers as much, I feel, because I feel like an answer kind of is like, oh, I have the answer. You can move on even if I don't like it. But I feel like it's been the later part of my life when there's been really hard questions that the village is a good place to wrestle. And even if those questions aren't answered until I'm dead, or probably won't care then, but it's more living the questions, and I feel like the village is a very safe place, like David said, to be able to wrestle, and sometimes I feel like that process is just worth a lot, and to have a safe place to do that has been a gift for these last 10 years.
So, 99% of you know I'm from Germany, and I'm the only one of my family that left. So all of my family is 6,000 miles away. And I came here with my husband to start a new family, and all of his family is several hours away. And so we came here, and for a few years, there really was no community, and at one point or another, we were abandoned. And so I know that in Christ we are all brothers and sisters, but I look at you, and I see some brothers and sisters, but I also see aunts and uncles. I see lots of cousins, and I see some nephews and nieces, and I feel like every Sunday I'm coming to a family reunion. I'm really, really grateful for this. And I'm not very good at showing and saying this, but I'm going to say it here. I really love you guys.
So something happened this year. I feel like God changed my heart. Like over the last few years, if anybody came up to me and was like, "Oh, what church do you go to?" I would say, "Oh, I go to this church called The Village, but it's really weird." And there would always be this disclaimer associated with it. And there would also be a disclaimer about like my own spirituality. People would ask me like, "Oh, what religion are you, or what do you believe?" And I'd say, "Well, like, I believe in Jesus, but he's a big mystery, and I'm really not sure." And I would offer this disclaimer. But this year, and it kind of came to fruition, I didn't even know it yesterday, my parents were visiting, and we were celebrating Kate's birthday, and it just came on my heart to pray for Kate and just thank God for everything that he's done, just like right in front of my parents. And I wasn't like, if you guys need to leave the room, I'm going to pray because I want to make sure you're comfortable with what happens. And my aunt came up to me later and said, I'm really happy that you said grace. That was really nice. And I was like, well, that's just part of our rhythms. That's just who I am now. And I was like, wow. Like, I think God has brought me up to a new level of spirituality where the parts that were ashamed to believe or ashamed to belong are no longer there. And there's this shameless spirituality that I'm really grateful for.
Last call. Okay.
Going once, going twice. Well, then. Oh, don't do that. All right. So let me tell you what I'm thankful for. Then we're going to sing 2 songs, and then I need a couple things. I got one griller. I need another griller. So I need okay, I got a griller. Daniel, the 2 Dans are grilling. So it's the Dan team is the firefighter is going to the 2 firefighters are going to make sure that we don't burn the place down. Okay. Now, I need some people to be willing to chop tomatoes and onions and lettuce anybody want to volunteer to chop? Okay, we got hands up. If you put your hand up, your choppers go in there. Oh, Aizen's going to do it. All right. So for most of you know that last year we put on a conference, and a few years ago I was sitting with Rod and I said, I just want to do a conference. I want to tell people what we do here at the Village, and I want to let people in. And then we thought, well, that's impossible. And then a couple of years later, we got a $20,000 grant to do it, which was awesome. But the thing that I'm really thankful for is I'm really thankful for our new elders, Mark and Corey and Julie. But in particular, I just want to say up here that I am really thankful for Julie, who's been being a pastor/elder at the Village for the last year. And she's had mono. She fell off her bike. I don't know if that happened that year, but it's part of the story. She had a concussion. And yet, in some ways, she did more than 10 of us while concussed and with mono, and just caring for us and caring for the community and helping do something that's actually not one of her strengths, which is administrate us all. And she's done a good job. So I just want to say publicly that I'm thankful and that you guys really stink at clapping. So I want you to clap like really hard for... Thank you. Thank you very much, Julie. No ways. I'm okay that we stink at clapping because I hate clapping, but I just wanted to make sure that we... So we're going to sing 2 songs, and then we'll sing some happy birthdays and get a blessing. And then we're going to watch one of our community members. I think most of you hope he loses. But if you don't know, Tom Brady last year sat on the healing chair and prayed that he would win the Super Bowl. We have a picture of it. And they won. So he did it at halftime. So we're going to watch and see if he wins again.